A Mafia army walked into Warehouse 17 and the walls started aiming back. 12 of armed men entered with rifles, armor, and confidence. Then the doors dropped like coffin lids, the lights exploded on, and 24 hidden guns slid through firing slits in the steel walls. Anthony Moretti had spent his life building fear, but in that warehouse, surrounded and disarmed, he learned what it felt like to be hunted by a man with nothing left to lose. Step into the absolute chaos of this room with me. Picture Anthony Moretti, the baddest mafia don in the city, a guy who usually eats terror for breakfast. Completely stripped of his armor and losing his mind, he slams his fists down, exploding a crystal tumbler all over his desk. He screams into the telephone, begging some shady contact to decode a twisted music sheet in 6 hours, or his daughter dies. An apology echoes back, then a dead dial tone. Anthony absolutely yeets the phone, tearing a massive scar through the silk wallpaper. The untouchable boss is gone, replaced by a terrified dad. Honestly, it is a brutal life lesson for anyone obsessed with control. No matter how much power and money we hoard, the people we love will always be that one beautiful, bleeding weakness we can never truly protect from the wolves. This guy is standing there literally shaking, his knuckles bone white as he grips a piece of paper like his life depends on it. Under the harsh lights, it looks like a piano score, but the ink is completely cursed. The notes are violently twisted, dragged across the staff at broken, unnatural angles. Bleeding red symbols and jagged numbers are hiding like venom right behind the chords. It is a straight-up death threat wearing the elegant mask of art. This honestly drops a quiet, tragic truth we all tend to ignore in life. The things that look the most innocent usually carry the absolute deepest poison. Around his table sit 11 guys drowning in sweat, 5 hardened mob advisors paralyzed by paper, and 3 elite codebreakers who just threw in the towel, leaving notebooks full of useless static. They literally dragged 2 conductors from Lincoln Center at 2 in the morning, and both guys look completely broken. The older musician whispers that this is not music at all, swearing he has never seen such twisted madness on a page. Suddenly, the grandfather clock tolls, dropping like a fatal gunshot in the dead silence. 5 hours and 47 minutes. That is all the time Anthony has left before his little girl, Sophia, is gone forever. It is a harsh reality check and a tragic life lesson we all must learn. Blind arrogance will always hide the cliff edge until you are already falling. He thought he owned the soul of this city, but tonight he owns absolutely nothing. Frank Delgado, his loyal underboss of 20 years, steps out of the shadows to rest a heavy hand on the shattered father. Frank is practically tearing his hair out, pacing the floor and begging Anthony to call the Russians or anyone who can fix this massive nightmare. But Anthony just stares blankly into the void. The silence in the room is suffocating. The most feared boss in all 5 boroughs is completely paralyzed. And here is the brutal reality you and I must eventually face. No matter how much dirty wealth you hoard, it cannot buy your way out of every hell. That is a devastating life lesson. He runs the underworld, yet he cannot save his own flesh and blood. Then, right at the absolute rock bottom of his despair, the heavy oak door softly creaks open. And who steps into this room full of hardened hitmen? A tiny 8-year-old girl in a torn grey sweater, holding a tub of leftover chicken stew like a rare diamond. This little girl scans the room, her eyes drifting past tailored suits, loaded weapons, and shattered crystal on the floor. Then, she whispers something that completely defies all logic. She says, "Sir, I can read that music sheet." The oxygen instantly vanishes from the room. Anthony, A ruthless dude who makes politicians weep lets out this broken laugh. But here is the massive plot twist. He does not realize the next 10 seconds will not just save his kid. It is going to violently tear his underworld empire down to the studs, exposing a twisted revenge plot brewing for 5 years. Here is a harsh truth about life. The deadliest snakes are always sleeping warm inside your own house. This wild betrayal will shatter his reality, forcing him to question every single guy standing by his side. Let us rewind the clock back 6 hours, you and I, to see how this mess started. The sun is shining over Brooklyn, painting a totally fake picture of calm. Anthony stands by the arched window of his estate, sipping dark espresso. At 37, he is the youngest boss this crime family has seen in 4 generations. His dad died 2 winters ago, handing him an underworld kingdom built on blood and shady shipping contracts. He controls every dock in town, and nothing moves without his nod. But here is the major life lesson we all need to remember. The higher you climb, and the more power you hoard, the bigger the target on your back becomes. He thought he was completely untouchable sitting up there on his mobster throne, totally blind to the cold knife waiting for him in the shadows. Look at this guy who holds the entire city by its throat. Dirty judges literally eat out of his palm, and street soldiers cross themselves when his shadow falls over them. Yet, inside his fortress, the iron mask totally drops. Picture a tiny white piano wrapped in a single pink ribbon. His 7-year-old daughter is hammering out a stumbling melody for the mom she never knew, looking up with big eyes, begging him to listen. It is a beautiful, tragic paradox that hits right in the feels. The brutal truth of life is actually quite simple. No matter how much terror a man spreads in the streets, loving a child will always bring him bleeding to his knees. We spend our restless days chasing power and clout, but in the end, true purpose is found only in protecting the innocent ones we actually hold dear. You and I have probably seen people completely wrecked by grief. Anthony has exactly one fragile piece of his soul left, and her name is Sophia. 3 years ago, he sat in a sterile hospital room, clutching his wife's hand for 72 hours until her monitor flatlined. Her last breath was a desperate plea, begging him not to let their kid become a monster. You can build a massive empire on fear, but fear cannot shield the kid sleeping down the hall. We cannot protect our family with the toxic poison we use to hurt others. He genuinely tried to change his ways for her. Fast forward to a crisp Saturday morning. Little Sophia, bundled up in a bright yellow raincoat, is begging to feed the ducks at Prospect Park. She truly believes her bright clothes will make the birds smile. Absolute tragedy always strikes when the air feels way too perfectly still. Anthony sends his most trusted heavy, Vincent, to escort his little girl to the park. Barely 15 minutes later, a terrified ranger makes a frantic call. Vincent is slumped by the duck pond, a heavy dart buried in his neck. The black SUV is totally abandoned. The hot cocoa is still steaming, the bread untouched. Sophia is gone, snatched right under the broad daylight. Miles away, Anthony is barking mob orders when his right-hand man Frank kicks the oak doors open. Frank has not broken protocol in 20 years, and one look at his pale face turns Anthony's blood to ice. The lesson here is cruel but unavoidable. No matter how high we build our fortress walls, the dark ghosts of our past will always find a way inside to collect their debts. Just 6 minutes later, a secret burner phone hidden inside Anthony's coat vibrates. The screen flashes a blocked number. The voice on the other end is totally stripped of humanity. It sounds like rusted metal scraping in the dark, giving off the cold static of a predator. this psycho delivers a chilling ultimatum. If Anthony wants to see his little girl breathe again, he has 12 hours to decode a piece of sheet music arriving at his gate. No cops, no negotiators. Everything he needs is locked inside those cursed notes. The line cuts to dead air before the Mafia boss can unleash a single threat. We often trick ourselves into believing we master our own fate, but control is a fragile illusion. In one terrifying heartbeat, Anthony realizes his violent power means absolutely zero when the person he loves most is suddenly taken away. Anthony bursts through the doors, sprinting down the marble steps like a madman. At the gate, a kid on a rusted bicycle hands a cream envelope to the guards and pedals away. Anthony rips it open. For the first time in his life, this ruthless killer's scarred hands are violently shaking. Inside sits a single piece of sheet music. He is facing an enemy he cannot shoot or intimidate. Minutes later, his estate devolves into a chaotic war room. Black sedans tear up the gravel, dropping off the most unlikely squad of saviors. The life lesson here is profound but true. A desperate person will abandon all pride when someone they love is in danger. To save what matters most, we must swallow our egos and accept help. Today, a handful of terrified outsiders are this fallen mob king's absolute last hope of bringing his little girl home safely. Look at the insane irony of this squad assembled in his fancy dining room. First up is Harold, a retired codebreaker, shuffling across the marble in slippers. Then, two snobby music professors tumble from a cab, arguing over some petty drama. Next is a frantic language expert, clutching her laptop inside a grocery bag. Finally, Dr. Patel, a math genius who literally speaks only in complex symbols. They are the strangest group ever dragged into the underworld. They carry 0 guns and spill 0 blood. Instead, they sit there in absolute terror, racing a brutal 12-hour clock to save a kidnapped kid. The lesson here is simple. True heroes rarely look the part, and the greatest battles in life are often won brilliance with quiet brilliance rather than brute violence. In this heavy room feels exactly like a drop of blood hitting the floor. All right, stick with me, because this is where the plot absolutely pops off. We have Anthony, the big Mafia boss, standing frozen like a deer in headlights. He is not even trying to bargain. His money guy is slamming massive stacks of cash onto a cold marble counter, but it does 0 good. Across the room, a terrified professor is shaking at a grand piano. Not just any piano, it is Anthony's late wife's piano. Talk about heavy emotional damage. The guy hits the keys and what comes out is absolute nightmare screeching. The grinding noise makes everyone's skin crawl, and honestly, it drops a massive truth bomb on us. All the dirty money in the world cannot buy you a single second of peace when your soul is already smashed into tiny pieces. The unhinged pauses between the screeching notes are breaking everyone's brains. The professor tries to force his hands to play, but his fingers literally lock up over the keys. He goes pale white, stammering that no human could have composed this garbage. Over in the corner, Harold, a top-tier codebreaker, is losing his mind. He has furiously scribbled over 3 entire pages of a notepad. Looking totally defeated, Harold mutters that in 42 years of spy work, he has never seen anything like this. The villain literally invented a new language just to mentally crush Anthony. It is a crazy life lesson, guys. The most terrifying enemies do not need actual weapons. They just patiently watch you figure out your absolute worst fears and then use them right against you. Let us break this scene down together. Dr. Patel is freaking out, staring at these weird symbols. She straight up tells everyone this is not math. It is pure toxic emotion bleeding onto the page. By the fire, Anthony is gripping the stone so hard his knuckles are bone white. His untouchable boss aura is gone. But check this out. Hiding in the dark curtains is Marcus Reed, the head of security. For 7 years, he has been Anthony's loyal shadow. While the boss hyperventilates, Marcus is just chilling there, totally blank-faced, zero panic. It shows us a massive truth about life. The loudest guy throwing a tantrum is never the real threat. The actual danger is always the perfectly quiet guy in the corner who silently decides how the whole story ends. The panic in the room is so thick you could slice it, but Marcus is completely frozen. When the professor cries that the music is impossible to play, the creepiest smirk flashes across Marcus's face. He is secretly loving this. These mobsters are totally blind to the snake at their feet. Then Frank, having zero ability to read the room, blurts out they should just drop $10 million to buy Sophia back. Big mistake. Anthony turns slowly, and the pure hatred in his eyes literally makes Frank stumble backward. It is absolute terror, and it points to a super dark reality. You can never slap a band-aid of cash over a bleeding emotional wound, especially not when your secret enemy does not care about getting rich, but simply wants to see your entire life destroyed. Anthony looks right through Frank, sounding dead inside, as he whispers that the kidnappers never asked for money. He knows how to handle greedy thugs, but this enemy just wants blood. Right then, the huge clock chimes, and the boss finally snaps. He grabs an expensive crystal vase, the last thing his dead wife ever bought, and smashes it against the stone wall. The crash sounds exactly like someone screaming. This hardcore Mafia king, a guy who did not shed a single tear at his own dad's funeral, collapses onto his knees right into the broken glass. It drops a heavy lesson on all of us. No matter how much tough armor you build up to protect your feelings, the worst kind of heartbreak can completely shatter you in one single second. All right, let us leave these crying mobsters upstairs for a second. Stick with me, because we are going down to the kitchen, and it smells amazing like chicken broth and rosemary. This is the absolute territory of Mrs. Dot. She is a tough lady from Brooklyn, so respected that even the scariest mafia captains shut up when she walks in. She has been feeding these criminals forever, but tonight, she is not cooking for the hitmen. Instead, she has 4 cheap plastic containers lined up on the counter. It is such a cool, grounded reality check for us. The real anchor keeping any massive empire from totally falling apart is rarely the loud guys waving guns around. It is usually the quiet, hard-working people in the background who simply make sure everyone gets a hot meal. Mrs. Dot is scooping this golden chicken stew into the containers, tossing in some thick buttered bread. She is humming a sweet Polish lullaby, totally ignoring the absolute chaos happening 2 floors up. Out of nowhere, the rusty alley screed squeaks open. A freezing little hand with busted knuckles slides inside, followed by these totally terrified eyes. A tiny voice whispers the cook's name from the dark. Now, any normal person would jump, right? But not Dot. She just flashes this super warm mom smile and grabs an extra slice of soft bread. It is honestly such a massive flex of the human spirit. Even if you are trapped inside a literal mafia fortress built on terrible crimes, pure kindness will always find a sneaky way to slip right through the back door. Dorothy softly calls the kid her little bee, joking that she thought the totally brutal city had swallowed her up. The little girl sneaks in, shutting the heavy door without making a single sound. Her name is Bianca. She is only 8 years old, wearing this totally busted gray sweater that has been stitched up like 3 times. Her freezing face is covered in dirt, but her huge blue eyes are darting everywhere, totally expecting a jump scare from life. And get this tiny kid lives 6 blocks away and is the only person taking care of her sick grandma. It is a crazy reality check. While the big, terrifying mafia bosses upstairs are literally crying over broken glass, the absolute toughest warriors on the planet are just hungry kids fighting to survive the night. Wrap your head around this for a second. Little Bianca's backstory is incredibly tragic. Her dad vanished in a shady apartment fire 5 years ago, and her mom was taken out by a stray bullet before that. The only memory this poor kid still hangs on to is the ghost of her mom playing the piano. Standing in the warm kitchen, she puts out her tiny hands to take the hot soup from Dorothy. Bianca whispers, "Thank you," so quietly, like she is scared the universe will punish her for speaking. Then, boom, a massive, unhinged scream from the mobsters rips through the ceiling. It honestly hits you right in the feels. Sometimes the absolute quietest people out there are just sitting around, waiting for this insanely loud, chaotic world to finally make some sense. Even down here, you and I can completely hear the madness. Something huge crashes upstairs, sounding like guards are literally wrestling the boss to the floor. The ceiling is shaking. Bianca freezes instantly. She hugs that warm soup to her chest, her eyes getting massive, and whispers to ask if the scary boss is hurt. Dorothy lets out this super heavy sigh. You can just see the exhaustion of having to explain this dark garbage to a pure kid. She gently tells Bianca that Anthony's daughter got snatched today, and the kidnappers only left behind a weird piece of paper. It is a total gut punch of a truth. All the massive bank accounts and terrifying mafia muscle in the universe cannot protect anyone from how random and completely cruel this world can be. While these hardened criminals are having full-on meltdowns over sheet music upstairs, the kitchen is dead quiet. Bianca is just frozen there, her dirty fingers gripping the soup. But then, the craziest thing happens. Her whole vibe shifts. The terrified kid look completely drops, and her big blue eyes get this chilling, super serious stare. With a voice perfectly calm, she actually asks Dorothy if those words on the paper happen to be written in red ink right above the notes. Boom. Amizot. Plot twist of the century. Mrs. Dot is absolutely stunned into silence. Her jaw is basically on the floor. It perfectly proves the wildest rule of life. The exact clues we need to solve our biggest, darkest problems are almost always held by the people we completely ignore. Dorothy just shakes her head. She has that tired look of someone who knows better than to ask about mafia business, but she is so floored that she asks the kid how she knows about the red ink. Bianca does not even blink. It is like she is suddenly possessed. Moving super carefully, the 8-year-old sets her soup down on the table like it is made of glass. Then, without dropping a single word, she turns and heads straight for the creepy hidden servant stairs in the back of the kitchen. Those stairs go straight up into the pitch-black danger zone. What an absolute cliffhanger. It leaves us with a heavy truth. If you actually want to face down the terrifying demons of your past, you eventually have to step away from your safe, comfortable routine and walk right into the dark. Let us step into the absolute madness together tonight, guys. Picture this scenario. We have 8-year-old Bianca, and her heart is literally hammering against her ribs so hard she can taste the adrenaline. She is sneaking up these sketchy, rotting wooden stairs in a literal mafia compound. She knows that somewhere up there, hiding among the most terrifying mobsters alive, is a single piece of paper that changes everything. It has been waiting for her. The old staircase is groaning loudly under her tiny shoes. She is gripping her frayed sweater like it is a bulletproof vest. Look, true courage is never about not being scared. True bravery is standing in the freezing dark, totally terrified, and forcing yourself to take that next step anyway. The walls up here are lined with framed oil paintings of dead crime bosses, and their creepy painted eyes track her every single move. Her caretaker told her 1,000,000 times to never come up to this floor, saying it is a brutal zone meant only for ruthless mafia hitmen. But tonight, she is breaking all the rules. You and I both know that wild magnetic pull of walking straight into the fire. She follows the screaming voices to this massive oak door at the end of the hall. It is cracked open just an inch, spilling harsh yellow light onto the floor. She presses her back against the wall, holding her breath until her lungs burn. She peeks in and spots a broke man at a huge mahogany table. Sometimes, crossing the line is the absolute only way to get the real truth. Enter the syndicate boss, Anthony Moretti. This guy is sweating through his suit under a massive crystal chandelier. Right in the middle of his giant table sits one piece of paper, looking like a total mystery waiting to be solved. Bianca locks her eyes on it and her breathing just stops. She is looking at these wild, jagged symbols. Bent stems on musical notes, crossed circles, and flat triangles. Ice instantly floods her veins. Plot twist, guys, she actually recognizes this exact cipher. She did not learn this at some fancy academy. She learned it at a scratched kitchen table, with her dad holding her tiny hand. It just goes to show that our absolute greatest gifts often come from quiet, totally ordinary moments with the people who love us most. Try to picture this insane memory rushing back to her. A tall guy with exhausted eyes is sitting with his little daughter. He is carving these wild, secret shapes across her sheet music with a yellow pencil. He whispers that these are the sacred marks of their family, a private language so secretive that not even her mom knows it. He begs her to keep it safe. But bro, she is only 3 years old. A toddler only cares about sugar cookies and morning cartoons, so the code obviously faded. When her daddy in a sudden fire 2 years later, all those lessons just became vague ghosts. It is a super harsh reality that we constantly take the people we love for granted, right up until the exact second they are snatched away from us forever. The past always catches up to you. Bianca stares at that desk, and her mental dam completely shatters. That treble clef is not a music note, it is the letter M. The sharp symbol means the number 4. Her dad's secret cipher was just chilling in her brain this whole time. Suddenly, a massive fist slams into the table, shaking the whole room. Moretti screams that he only has 6 hours left before his little girl gets completely taken out. Out in the hallway, Bianca loses all feeling in her legs. She leans against the cold plaster, totally paralyzed by the shock. It serves as a crazy reminder that life will drag you kicking and screaming right into somebody else's absolute nightmare, no matter how hard you try to hide from the drama. We really need to step back and talk about the absolute monster inside that room. Entire city blocks are terrified of Anthony Moretti. Dudes cross the street just to avoid his building. The rumors are insanely dark, like him burying rivals under the pier concrete. A mafia kingpin like him places zero value on a stray orphan kid. If she walks in there, she could instantly disappear. She is 8 years old, rocking scuffed shoes, surviving on leftover soup. She could easily sneak back to her room and pretend nothing happened. Honestly, choosing to walk away is often the smartest survival tactic you can use in this vicious world. There is zero shame in running away when the blazing fire inside the room has absolutely nothing to do with you. The shadows wrap around Bianca as this terrifying vision hits her. She pictures a 7-year-old girl she has never even met, tied up in some nasty warehouse, sobbing while mobsters plot her doom. That kidnapped girl is motherless, carrying the exact same heavy grief Bianca's younger deals with every single day. The little 8-year-old digs her fingernails into her hands to stay grounded. Through the ringing in her ears, she hears her late mom whispering to her, "Kindness is a painfully hard choice. We always forget that true courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling your bones rattle with pure terror and choosing to step up anyway." Bianca opens her eyes. Unarmed and tiny, she turns right toward the absolute lion's den. Bianca fixes her messy sweater, tucks her blonde hair back, and shoves the heavy oak door open. The screaming argument inside cuts off in a millisecond. A dead silence drops over the room. 11 hardcore mobsters snap their heads toward the door. Vincent, the massive bodyguard who already fumbled the boss's daughter, goes into pure panic mode. He rips his pistol out, metal scraping loud. Beside him, a crazy street captain draws his weapon, ready to blast whatever is in the shadows. It just shows how deeply paranoia rots the human soul when you live your whole life doing bad things. One tiny creak of a door hinge, and these incredibly powerful mobsters are instantly ready to murder the darkness without a single second thought. Stick with me here, because the tension in this room is freezing cold. Thankfully, Frank Delgado, the veteran enforcer, steps right into the line of fire. He blocks the trigger-happy rookies, showing that calm control that kept him alive for years. He lowers his gun, realizing the massive threat is just a tiny kid whose head barely reaches the doorknob. Slowly, the boss pivots. His face is so angry the temperature literally drops. He whispers a threat that promises absolute ruin, demanding to know who let a stray kid into his Mafia fortress. Nobody says a word, because no one let her in. It is a beautiful reminder that the absolute bravest souls walking among us are usually the exact people society completely ignores. The Mafia Don takes 2 massive steps forward. He screams for a guard to drag this kid back to the kitchen before he loses his mind. This is the kind of rage that makes grown enforcers cry. But Bianca does not flinch. Her legs are shaking so hard her clothes are vibrating, but her cheap sneakers are glued to the floor. She tilts her head up, stares down the deadliest guy in the city, and casually drops the bomb that she can read his paper. Her voice is shaking, but her spirit is totally unbreakable. For 3 long seconds, a room full of trained killers just forgets how to breathe. Moretti lets out a dark laugh. Still, her defiance leaves a massive lesson. Standing up to a monster is terrifying, but it is the only way to make them see you. Think about the massive ego filling that room right now. Moretti is yelling that his top-tier codebreakers are completely stumped. He has former spy agency guys sweating buckets under the lights, and they cannot crack a single word. He looks down at this tiny orphan who eats his leftover scraps, asking if she really thinks she is smarter than his highly paid team. The Don is just deeply insulted. He points at the door and orders Frank to throw her out into the cold streets. We see this toxic flaw all the time in the real world. Powerful people are super quick to trash anyone who lacks money or status. Yet, the most broken, ignored person in the room might be the exact one holding the ultimate key to your survival. Frank gently grabs her tiny wrist to pull her away from the table. But in that exact split second, the little girl digs her heels in and just shouts the translation out loud. The treble clef is an M, the sharp symbol is a 4, and the 8th rest is a blank space. She is spitting the secret code like absolute rapid fire. Frank stops dead in his tracks. All around that massive table, the expensive analysts snap their heads up like starving dogs smelling a fresh steak. Anthony Moretti literally stops moving. For a crazy moment, the big Mafia boss completely forgets to breathe. It is such a wild lesson for all of us. One loud, totally undeniable truth, spoken bravely, can instantly shatter a room built purely on blind arrogance. Anthony turns around with the agonizing slowness of a man afraid he might shatter a ghost. He lowers his dark gaze, asking the trembling girl to repeat her words. Bianca vibrates with absolute terror, yet she delivers the truth with chilling clarity. She speaks of a hidden cipher, the Hail language, a tragic secret shared only between her and her dead father. It was supposed to stay buried, until this ransom note dragged it into the light. She begs for 10 minutes to break the puzzle. Anthony glances across the shadows at Frank, who silently taps his watch. 5 hours and 30 minutes remain. No. Words pass between the men. When you are backed into a pitch-black corner with your time bleeding away, you must learn to trust the impossible if you ever hope to see tomorrow. Anthony studies this fragile child drowning in a ruined sweater, meeting a fierce blue stare that refuses to flinch. After a heavy, suffocating silence, he points toward the massive leather armchair at the head of the mahogany table. It is the very throne that once belonged to his ruthless father. He orders her to sit. She moves through the dim light. His voice drops to a dangerously quiet pitch. He warns her that if she wastes a single minute of his daughter's fading life, the violent consequences will be unimaginable. He lets the dark threat hang in the cold air. Bianca is already walking across the thick Persian rug, fully aware of the monsters in the room. True courage is understanding the crushing weight of your promises and stepping into the shadows anyway. That gigantic, cracked leather armchair practically swallows the little girl whole, wrapping her in the scent of old power. Bianca perches on the very edge, just to keep her small shoes from swinging above the dark floorboards. She grips the worn armrests like a lifeline. This was the seat of a ruthless crime boss, a man whose suits weighed more than her fragile bones. Then, Mrs. Dot materializes from the deep shadows. The elderly housekeeper ignores the armed men entirely. She carries a silver tray, quietly setting down a warm glass of milk, touched with honey, buttered rye bread, and a freshly sharpened yellow pencil. In the absolute center of an unforgiving storm, quiet acts of genuine care are the only things that keep our fading humanity alive. You and I are going to appreciate this specific detail because it changes the temperature of this freezing room. Mrs. Dot rests her weathered hand on the back of Bianca's neck. It is the first drop of real comfort this exhausted child has felt since stumbling into this waking nightmare. The old woman steps back against the mahogany paneling, silently refusing to abandon her. The little girl smooths out the crumpled ransom note. Those jagged symbols stare back at her like ghosts from a ruined past. She picks up the yellow pencil. Her hand might be tiny, but her grip is flawless. Her father taught her to hold a pencil exactly the way a trauma surgeon holds a scalpel. With cold precision, she goes to work. Proper training always shines brightest when the weight of the world is heavy enough to crush you. Right beneath the first jagged mark, she carefully sketches the letter H. The graphite scrapes loudly in the dead silence. Dr. Patel leans over, quietly asking why she chose that specific letter. Bianca does not even blink, her mind locked into a distant world where only she and her father exist. She softly explains that in this forgotten Hail language, notes are not named by their sound, but by their exact physical placement on the lines. You simply count upward from the base. Harold Weiss The veteran codebreaker chokes on his own breath, whispering about the terrifying simplicity of the design. Bianca drops a heavy piece of reality on the desperate men. The cipher only works if you know which hidden marks turn letters into numbers. True wisdom is realizing that holding the right tools means absolutely nothing if you lack the vision to use them. Her fragile whisper cuts through the vast room as she explains that this specific note is a 17. It sits firmly in the 17th spot from the bottom of the bass clef. You must switch clefs halfway through the grim page to even stand a chance of reading it. She scribbles a 1 and a 7. A sharp adds 1, a flat subtracts 1, and a double sharp adds 2. Then she drops a detail that breaks the hardened men around her. Her dead father made her practice this exact math in her head over morning cereal. Anthony has ghosted right behind her massive chair. He stands with a trembling hand clamped tightly over his mouth, terrified that a single ragged breath might shatter her focus. He is watching a true miracle unfold over a simple glass of milk. The greatest truths in life usually reveal themselves when we finally quiet our minds and just pay close attention. The camera pans across the heavy velvet drapes where the shadows cling to Marcus, while the little girl quietly counts on her fingers, crossing out letters with innocent focus. Marcus is completely unraveling in the dark. He has not moved an inch in over an hour, yet his face is a mask of ruin. His skin is the color of wet ash. His jaw is locked with such brute force that a tiny muscle spasms in his cheek, and his knuckles gleam a terrifying bone white. For one desperate second, his frantic eyes dart toward the heavy oak door, measuring the exact distance to his freedom. Nobody else catches this flash of sheer panic. It is a harsh, unforgiving reminder for all of us. The absolute greatest danger is usually standing right inside your own house, hiding in plain sight while everyone else is looking the wrong way. Every single man in that suffocating study is entirely hypnotized by the little girl. Everyone, that is, except Mrs. Dot. The elderly housekeeper sees it all, her sharp eyes quietly filing Marcus and his terrified energy right into the back of her mind. We should never underestimate the quietest folks in the room, because they are usually the only ones firmly anchored to reality. 8 agonizing minutes bleed past. The silence in the room is physically crushing. Nobody coughs. Nobody shifts their weight. Frank completely forgets the ticking watch on his wrist. Vincent lets his hand drift away from his holster. The veteran codebreaker just stares at her yellow pencil like it is a live explosive. Finally, Bianca finishes. She drops the pencil, stares at the page in deep distress, then snatches it back to scribble one final note. She drops the pencil for the final time and takes a heavy, ragged breath. Then she drops the devastating bomb. "It is an address," she whispers to Moretti, her voice completely hollowed out. She sounds like someone trapped inside a nightmare. She desperately tries to warn him that a hidden pattern exists underneath the music, but Anthony is entirely done listening. Before she can finish her warning, he reaches over and yanks the decoded paper right off her trembling lap. He reads the text twice over. Warehouse 17, Red Hook Docks, Brooklyn 11 tonight. The crushing baggage of his grief and the terror of the past 7 hours hit him like a physical blow. Life teaches us that desperation makes us rush blindly into the dark when we truly need to pause. He looks at Frank and spits out 2 cold words: "Get everyone." The exact second those 2 words leave his mouth, the grand study violently shatters into chaos. Frank and Vincent are already a terrible blur of motion. Tommy sprints down the dark hallway, screaming for the armored cars. This elegant room instantly devolves into a staging ground for war. Suit jackets fly off, heavy tactical weapons are racked, and radios pop to life with static. It is a storm of dangerous men preparing to tear Brooklyn apart. Bianca desperately tries to stop them. She begs them to listen, yelling that the musical rests are completely wrong in 7 places. But nobody hears her. Not one man stops to look back. They simply slam the heavy oak door shut. Remember, ignoring the quietest voice in the room is often the deadliest mistake a person can make. Now, she sits entirely alone, shaking in the heavy silence. Follow me closely here, because we are heading down into the dark. This basement was built for absolute war. You move past a fake wine cellar, punch a heavy code into a steel door, and step inside a concrete bunker packed with enough firepower to run a small country. Frank stands dead in the center of the harsh lights, directing the deadly traffic. He tosses Kevlar vests to the crew, puts Angelo on the radio, and has Tommy secure the breaching charges. Frank calmly tells Vincent he is riding up front. You and I have seen people break under pressure. Sometimes you realize that true leadership is simply staying perfectly calm when the world falls apart. Frank organizes this hit squad with chilling perfection, making sure every blind spot is covered before they ride into the night. Frank looks these hardened enforcers dead in the eyes. Anyone who pulls a trigger before the green light answers to him before the boss. 12 dangerous men nod in absolute silence. Rifles are pulled off the cold metal racks. Extra clips slide smoothly into tactical belts. They strap on night vision gear and trauma kits. The sharp metallic clicks blend into a terrifying symphony. It reminds us that violence always has its own ugly, methodical rhythm if you just listen closely enough. Meanwhile, completely alone upstairs in the dark dressing room, Anthony sits in front of a tall mirror. He stares into the glass, no longer recognizing his own hollow face. Slowly, with a trembling hand, he reaches down and grabs the heavy 50 caliber handgun his father gifted him for his 21st birthday. We have all seen this Mafia setup play out, right? Anthony is acting like an absolute unit, breaking down a massive 50 caliber weapon with terrifying precision. He slams the heavy magazine into the grip. The metal clank echoes through the room like a prison door slamming shut for good. In the mirror, he spots little Bianca, picking at her frayed sweater like a nervous wreck. She actually step into the line of fire with him. Anthony just gives her a hollow, freezing laugh and completely shuts the kid down. In this brutal underworld showing, a soft spot is basically a death sentence. It is a crazy life lesson for us all. Sometimes, when we try our absolute hardest to protect the people we care about, we end up pushing them away at the exact moment. They are desperately trying to save us from ourselves. Anthony turns to the kid with a voice like rumbling thunder, telling her she has already carried way too much trauma. He orders her to stay put, holstering his massive hand cannon and throwing on his midnight trench coat. But Bianca is not having it. She roots her tiny feet to the floorboards and whispers a desperate warning. The hidden rhythm in that sheet music is totally flawed. Talk about a massive plot twist. But Anthony is blinded by his own boss energy. He brushes past her, insisting the enemy address is the only ammo he needs, and marches into the freezing rain on a bloody vendetta. Arrogance is a suffocating blindfold, guys. If you let your massive ego run the show, you will completely miss the quiet, desperate warnings right in front of your face that could actually save you from absolute ruin. Trailing behind the syndicate boss like a total ghost is Marcus. He pauses at the doorway just to stare down this trembling child. This is not a look of hot anger. It is the terrifying, icy calculation of a guy who deletes people for a living. We are seeing the dead stare of a career hitman, measuring if this kid is a threat and picturing how easily he could just erase her. Absolute madness. He vanishes into the hallway, leaving behind a nasty smell of sour metal and stale cologne. By 10:15, 3 unmarked black sedans creep down the gravel in perfect tactical formation, red taillights bleeding into the wet Brooklyn asphalt. It is a chilling reminder for all of us. True evil never announces itself with a loud scream. It quietly slips right through the shadows while everyone else is distracted by the noise. Bianca scrambles up to the second floor, pressing her cheek against the freezing window glass. She watches those crimson taillights fade into the mist until the massive maple trees swallow them completely. Out of the dark corner, Mrs. Dot walks up, placing a gentle hand on the kid. She whispers that Bianca pulled off a massive miracle tonight, scoring a win no hardened mobster could ever steal. Listen, in our lowest moments, a single phrase of quiet comfort is usually the only real shield we have against a chaotic world. But get this plot twist, the kid actually rejects the warmth. Without a single word, she spins around and marches straight back to the Godfather's empty study. The heavy oak door is cracked open, and her untouched glass of milk is just sitting there on the mahogany desk, waiting for her. You and I need to step closer and look at this frame together, because the smallest details are spilling all the tea. Pinned flat under a heavy brass lion on that desk is the original sheet music. The Godfather snatched her translation, but completely left the source material behind. Bro, that is a textbook fatal oversight. 8-year-old Bianca climbs into this giant leather boss chair, gripping her wooden pencil, but she ignores the written melody. This street is often survived by teaching herself to read on the filthy floors of city libraries. She understands a massive truth that grown hitmen ignore. To find the genuine truth in this crazy life, you can never just swallow what people choose to spoon-feed you. You have to actively hunt down the hidden secrets they are desperately trying to bury in the dark. Bianca narrows her dark eyes, shifting her focus away from the music and diving straight into the empty spaces between the notes. She counts the rhythm of the opening measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. It seems perfectly normal, but at the 4th measure, her pencil freezes against the heavy parchment. 5 beats. She flips the page with the cold precision of a veteran detective. The 7th bar has 3.5 beats. The 11th has 4.5. Guys, no actual musician makes these clumsy mistakes, and no arrogant Mafia codebreaker ever slows down enough to catch them. Her father buried these hidden messages with absolute genius-level IQ. It drops a massive life lesson on us. If you never stop to question the underlying rhythm of the world around you, you will always fall for the grand illusion. Bianca presses her pencil to her lips, whispering to the paper like it is a literal ghost. What else are you hiding? She has not seen her father in 5 agonizing years. Suddenly, the whole scene shifts violently. Miles away, an icy rain is trashing a blacked-out expressway. 3 massive trucks tear through the storm, tires hissing over the slick asphalt. Inside the middle truck, the syndicate boss sits completely frozen. He has a heavy weapon on his lap, but his fingers are crushing a worn leather wallet. He never opens it because he already has every scratch on his little girl's photograph memorized. Talk about a brutal emotional anchor. This is the ultimate danger of deep attachment, guys. When you anchor your soul to someone you truly love, their memory becomes the invisible engine driving your most desperate choices. That hidden photograph captures his daughter Sophia laughing at the boardwalk, her chin sticky with melted chocolate. She is flashing a goofy, missing tooth smile. Anthony had sworn the tooth fairy would drop enough silver for endless carousel rides. Beside Godfather, his right-hand man Frank sits in total silence, a weapon resting on his lap. The creepy green dashboard light paints his face in harsh shadows. Frank leans in close so the driver cannot hear and whispers that they need to talk. Staring into the rain, Anthony tells him to spit it out. Frank drops a massive bomb, warning the boss that the little orphan back at the mansion is absolutely not a normal stray. We should all take note of this reality check. It is always a fatal mistake to underestimate the quiet people who spend their days simply watching and listening from the shadows. While the soldiers loaded weapons, Frank did some serious digging. He found out an elderly woman has been tossing this kid scraps for 2 brutal years. Nobody knows her real name or where she came from. She just drifts out of the fog, grabs her bread, and ghosts out. Frank locks eyes with the mob boss and delivers a cold reality check. A starving orphan who casually breaks a complex cipher that stumped federal agencies is no random accident. That is massive main character energy. Hearing this, Anthony slowly turns his heavy head. He swears that once his daughter is safe in bed tonight, he will buy that brilliant stray a house and secure her life forever. We are seeing a powerful light in this dark underworld. One single act of pure, unselfish loyalty has the power to completely rewrite the tragic ending of a broken story. Anthony draws an absolute hard line. Saving the orphan is a side quest for tomorrow. Tonight, this crime family is descending straight into hell to rip his daughter out of the dark. Frank gives a grim nod. Now, look closely at Marcus in the front seat. This top-tier enforcer is sitting unnaturally rigid, his knuckles turning chalk white against his rifle. He steals a panicked look into the rearview mirror, breathing out only when he realizes the boss is distracted by the photograph. Marcus swallows hard, his pulse hammering against his neck. His grip tightens on the cold steel. Suddenly, the radio hisses with static. 8 minutes out. The dock perimeter is totally bare. This unnatural silence drops a harsh reality on us. When the world feels entirely too quiet, it usually means you are blindly walking straight into a deadly trap. Stick with me here, because the rising tension in this scene is absolutely suffocating. The streets are consumed by a total blackout. 0 headlights cutting through the thick fog. No roaming watchmen. There is only the concrete shell of Warehouse 17, bleeding this sickly yellow light into the freezing rain. Frank taps his earpiece, ordering absolute silence. In the pitch-black back seat, Anthony grips his rifle so fiercely that the leather strap actually groans. Guys, this man is an undisputed king of the underworld. He has built a blood-soaked Mafia empire over 4 merciless decades. Yet, as the tires crunch the gravel, the untouchable Godfather is completely paralyzed by sheer terror. It exposes a devastating, universal truth. All the dirty, money, fear, and power on earth mean absolutely nothing if you cannot protect the fragile family you love. For 20 violent years, this Godfather trained his mind to be completely unforgiving. He buried his panic deep down whenever rival gangs put a hit on his life. But tonight, those old Mafia rules are shattered. The ransom is not a heavy bag of dirty cash. The target is a tiny kid with a missing front tooth. She is literally his heart, walking around outside his chest. The universe always has a cruel way of exposing your one fatal vulnerability. It proves that genuine love is the only force capable of breaking a hardened soul. 2 blocks away, the heavy trucks cut their engines. They glide forward like iron specters, hiding behind rusted shipping containers. 12 elite Mafia enforcers melt into the freezing rain. Weapons drawn, they march blindly into the dark abyss, prepared for an absolute bloodbath. Listen up, guys, because you and I are about to unpack something absolutely unhinged. We're looking at Warehouse 17, a rusty, sketchy iron death trap in the middle of nowhere, literally screaming bad news. You know that gut feeling when you are about to make a terrible mistake, that heavy instinct begging you to turn back? Yeah, listening to that intuition is literally the best life hack ever. But my guy Frank, he is completely ignoring it tonight. He grips his radio, dead silent in the freezing cold, and starts barking tactical orders like he is in an esports lobby. Alpha to the front, Bravo flanking east, Charlie locking down the north. And his absolute strict rule: nobody even thinks about pulling a trigger until they actually lay eyes on the little girl. But get this, the big boss, Anthony, he totally ignores the strat. Dude just main characters his way down the busted concrete, his heavy coat violently whipping in the freezing wind. He is clutching this massive steel pistol, rain slicking the grip, while 12 of his heavy hitters snap their flashlights on behind him, slicing up the pitch-black darkness. He grabs the frozen handle, takes a massive breath, and just shoves the door open. Honestly, rushing blindly into sketchy situations is a one-way ticket to a game over screen. Life lesson: guys, patience keeps you breathing, while panic just guarantees you take the loss. He steps right into this massive, echoing void, immediately choking on the nasty stench of black mold and straight-up toxic chemicals. Inside, it is dead quiet. I mean, suffocating, drop-a-pin silence. Right in the absolute middle of the cracked floor is a single wooden chair holding a stuffed bear. But here is the twist: it is wrapped in a bright yellow raincoat, Sophia's coat, the exact same one his daughter had on this morning. Anthony freezes, his face going totally pale. His 12 goons stop dead behind him, their flashlight beams literally shaking on the toy. Real talk, when a predator leaves a shiny little gift in the open, it is never for peace. If something looks too easy, it is bait. Always trust that red flag in life, folks. One hitman is about to swear when a deafening, horrific metallic crash completely shatters the silence. It's 3 insanely heavy steel plates just slam down over the doors. Just like that, the main entrance, East Bay, and fire escape are completely wiped off the map. Hydraulic pistons shriek like crazy as massive iron slabs lock into the floor. To Anthony, it literally sounds like dirt hitting his own coffin. Pure panic sets in. He throws his whole body against the freezing metal, pounding his fists on the door. But all he gets is a sad, dead thud. 10 inches of reinforced steel? Yeah, the squad is officially buried alive. It really shows you a hard truth: real power is not about how many big guns you pack. It is about who controls the room you stand in. Always know your surroundings, guys. Suddenly, every single tactical radio screeches with this awful noise before totally dying out. Green lights flip to red. They are completely offline. Angelo frantically taps his tracking tablet, but it is straight up static, zero signal. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, 20 giant stadium lights up in the rafters explode on. The blinding white flash is literally painful. We are talking about 12 hardened Mafia killers screaming and covering their eyes, stumbling around like terrified toddlers. Vincent faceplants into a concrete pillar, and Tommy drops to his knees, totally blinded. For 3 wild seconds, the deadliest crew in the city is entirely helpless. There is a massive lesson here. Folks never walk into a room thinking you are the smartest player. Arrogance will blind you way faster than any floodlight ever could. Stay humble. As their vision finally starts to clear, The absolute nightmare becomes real. Stick with me, because this is where the trap snaps shut. Those gross, decaying walls around them, an absolute fake-out. They are actually heavy armored steel plates hiding behind a cheap, rusted shell. And poking through these tiny firing slits are the cold muzzles of 24 rifles, aimed right at Anthony and his crew. The shooters are completely invisible in the dark. It is a brutal wake-up call we all have to face the second you stop paying attention to your foundation. You start digging your own grave. Keep your eyes open, people. The Moretti family did not just get ambushed here. They basically walked themselves into a high-tech blender. Suddenly, a crusty old speaker on the wall crackles to life. The heavy air fills with awful static. The mastermind is on the mic. This smooth voice cuts right through all the chaos from the speakers. The guy sounds totally chilled out, like he is sipping an espresso while watching a movie. He simply says, "Welcome, Mr. Moretti. Make yourself comfortable." Guys, Anthony absolutely loses his mind. He aims his massive gun and rage, fires a bullet straight into the fake wall. It pings off the hidden steel, doing 0 damage. He starts screaming at the ceiling, demanding his daughter back, calling the guy a coward. But the voice just chuckles, not an angry laugh, but this soft, skin-crawling giggle. Honestly, here is your reality check. You can have all the firepower in the world, but the second you let pure anger take over, the calm wins. Emotional control is everything, or you lose the game. This is where the psychological mind games go completely off the charts. The voice on the speaker stays insanely calm, telling Anthony his kid is totally safe. Sipping hot chocolate and watching Shun, Art, Rude, Pri, he promises nobody even touched her, flexing the fact that he's not a ruthless monster like the Mafia guys trapped here. Anthony is literally hyperventilating so hard his gasps are echoing off the concrete. And then from the absolute pitch black back of the room, a new noise drops. Clank, clank. Slow, heavy boots walking down a metal staircase. The takeaway here is super obvious. This guy's panic is literal poison to your brain. When you throw away your inner peace, you hand over your survival. Let us finally see who is stepping out of the shadows and into the glaring spotlight. Every single footstep echoes like a massive bell ringing in a graveyard. The tension is so thick you could slice it with a sword. A dozen flashlights violently whip toward the noise, lighting up the bottom of the stairs. Out steps this guy in his early 40s. He has this striking silver hair and a face that looks like he walked right through hell and just got bored. He is rocking a super expensive, tailored black overcoat, completely buttoned up. His face is totally deadpan, like he is just waiting for a concert to start, completely unbothered by the heavily armed squad in front of him. Oh, and his hands are totally empty. Life keeps reminding us of this hardcore truth. The quietest dude in a room full of screaming tough guys is almost always the most dangerous boss of all. Instead of packing heat, this absolute phantom is casually twirling a thin black conductor baton. He stops, tilts his head, and just studies the sweating Mafia boss like he is admiring a tragic masterpiece he spent a decade painting. He glides into the blinding lights, totally unbothered, moving like he rehearsed this scene 1,000,000 times. He stops exactly 6 steps away from Anthony and his shaking gun. In the harsh light, Anthony finally recognizes him. It is the kind of face a guilty conscience can never delete. Razor-sharp jawline and pale, dead blue eyes that pierce right through you like shattered glass. Listen up, because karma is the most patient hunter ever. You might think you can outrun your past mistakes, but eventually, the bill comes due for everyone. You and I are about to see this boss completely break down. The realization hits him like a freight train. He saw those exact pale blue eyes just 2 hours ago when he threw that little girl into his van. While her eyes were full of innocent terror, this guy has eyes of pure winter ice. The stranger gives a super sarcastic bow, introducing himself as Victor Hale. He smoothly whispers that Anthony will not recognize him because guys like him never remember the people they crush. Anthony feels his heart hammering. He is mentally scrolling through his own toxic history, trying to place the face. Victor just enjoys watching the panic before dropping the absolute nuke. But I am sure you remember Elena. Guys, the little details we arrogantly brush off will always come back to bite us. Drop of blood drains right out of Anthony in an awful flash of memory. His brain yanks him out of that warehouse and dumps him 5 years in the past into a fancy concert hall on a freezing night. Here is the sickest irony ever. Anthony only bought those tickets using a burner name to hide from a rival Mafia gang. That one selfish move put him up in the balcony of a quiet charity gig. He remembers sitting in the shadows, watching a stunning young woman in a cream dress walk onto the stage. She sat at a huge piano, looking incredibly happy, just about to play. Listen carefully, because every selfish thing you do creates a massive ripple effect. You might hustle to save your skin, but you never stick around to see the innocent folks drowning in your messy wake. Picture this. Guys, the theater is totally quiet until the 12th piano note drops. Boom. The massive oak doors get absolutely blasted off their hinges. 4 armed goons storm the aisles, just spraying lead everywhere like an action movie. They think the big boss, Anthony, is sitting in the crowd. Massive fail. Anthony is chilling up in the exclusive balcony, completely untouchable. Down below, the stage gets completely shredded. One stray shot hits the innocent piano player. She doesn't even scream, man. Her hands just slip off the keys with this quiet little gasp. Listen, you and I both know collateral damage is a complete lie invented by guys with bloody hands. Every bullet finds a beating heart. It proves that blind ambition always wrecks the innocent first. Keep your ego in check, or someone else pays your tab. The pianist slumps off the bench, fingers dragging across the keys, to drop one last chord before the crowd absolutely loses it. Fast forward to now, under the blinding warehouse lights. We got Victor staring absolute daggers through this sweating mob boss. He drops the craziest plot twist. Elena's was my wife, bro. Those words hit the room like an anvil. You can see the pure rage in his jaw as he talks about his kid losing her mom. He points a solid steel baton right at Anthony's face. She bled out because of your stupid little turf war, he says, cold as ice. They missed your head, and my whole universe got cancelled. Here is the absolute truth, guys. You can sprint from the drama you cause all you want, but the universe keeps receipts. Always take responsibility, because karma never forgets an unpaid debt. Look at this, guys. The big, bad, untouchable Don is absolutely falling apart. Anthony is sweating buckets, literally shaking while stammering out his pathetic defense. He swears on his life the theater hit was a total glitch, begging Victor to believe he never greenlit the strike. But Victor just drops this slow, terrifying smile. It is the look of a dude who waited 5 long years for this exact garbage excuse. You did not want it? Victor repeats, sounding incredibly toxic. What a massive luxury. You strike the match, watch the city burn, and sleep like a baby while my wife dies. Honestly, it is a harsh reality check we all need to internalize. Throwing around empty apologies means absolutely zero once the damage is permanent. Think before you act, because a cheap sorry will never fix a shattered life. Victor is standing there like a stone statue. His voice is practically dripping with 5 years of pure, unfiltered venom. He forces the Mafia boss to picture the brutal aftermath: a sealed coffin, and a tiny girl sobbing her eyes out, begging her mom to wake up, and all this trauma was just the cost of Anthony's little side quest for power. Slowly, Victor points that steel baton right at the shaking boss. "Tonight, you drink from the exact same toxic cup," he whispers. "You're going to feel the absolute panic of knowing your own kid is trapped. And you are totally powerless." Anthony instantly cracks, screaming his daughter's name like a madman. It is wild how empathy is a brutal teacher. Some people just never understand the heat of the fire until their own house is burning down. Always treat others with the respect you want for your family. The boss absolutely folds. His massive ego just evaporates, and he is straight up bawling, begging to see his kid. Victor just stares at him with these cold, dead eyes. No sympathy at all. He reaches into his trench coat and whips out a tablet. With one tap, he spins the screen around so every single goon in the warehouse can see the nightmare unfolding. There is little Sophia, chilling on a rug with her stuffed bunny, laughing at some cartoon. But wait for it. The camera slowly pans over, and sitting right next to her is a massive brick of military-grade explosives. Grief really turns a gentle dude into an absolute menace. Let this be a massive life lesson for everyone. Never push a person who has already lost everything, because a person with zero left to lose is the most dangerous force on earth. Always respect boundaries. Hooked right to that explosive is a neon red digital timer glaring in the dark. It flashes 1 hour and 45 minutes, and the seconds start ticking down. Seeing that timer literally snaps Anthony's brain in half. The dude lets out this crazy animal roar that shakes the whole warehouse and charges forward, waving his piece around like a total rookie. Frank is top muscle, has to absolutely body slam his own boss to the concrete. He pins the thrashing Don down, screaming at him to chill, because Victor is holding all the winning cards right now. Through this chaotic mess, Victor doesn't even flinch. He stands there like a ghost. Listen closely, because this is huge. Pure, unchecked rage is a massive trap. If you let raw emotion drive your decisions, you are going to crash and burn. Always keep a cool head when the heat is on. Victor just watches these mobsters wrestle with totally dead, empty eyes. He starts laying out exactly how utterly doomed they are, crushing every last drop of hope. He roasts their cheap tactical gear and small fry crew. Sure, on a normal Tuesday, they look tough, but tonight they are basically fish in a barrel. Victor points his baton up into the dark rafters. He casually drops that there are 24 elite snipers up there, with crosshairs painted right at their sweaty domes. Plus, the walls are reinforced with 2 solid inches of ballistic steel. The place is a literal vault. Let this reality check sink in for a minute. Doing your homework and over-preparing is what keeps you ahead in this world. If you just wander blindly into a situation without checking the exits, you hand your fate over to the architect. Always look before you leap. The mental mind games are just getting started. Victor points his baton higher, making the goons look up at 4 massive military mines strapped to the ceiling. One button, and this place becomes a concrete pancake. Oh, and the cherry on top? A jammer is blocking every phone, and those giant iron doors were literally welded shut. Victor smirks, like a total supervillain. "There are no emergency exits," he whispers, "just the timer I decided to give you." Anthony finally stops kicking. He looks around at his squad, and it is pathetic. Frank looks like a zombie. Vincent literally drops his rifle on the floor. The new kid in the back is straight up hyperventilating. It is a brutal, undeniable fact of life. Fake loyalty looks amazing when everything is going great, but as soon as true terror hits, the cowards always fold first. Choose your inner circle wisely. The silence in this warehouse is so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. Sweating bullets, Anthony frantically checks his broken squad. Angelo is spamming a dead radio. Then, the boss counts his guys. 11 men. His stomach absolutely hits the floor because there were supposed to be 12. He scans the shadows and his brain short-circuits. Marcus Reed, his literal right-hand man, is chilling over on Victor's side of the room. The top enforcer just slipped over there like a ninja. Marcus looks incredibly relaxed, totally safe from the incoming bloodbath. Anthony's face contorts in pure, unfiltered betrayal. Stick with me here, guys, because this is a massive lesson. You can build an iron fortress to lock out the enemies, but the knife that finally takes you out is almost always held by someone you call a friend. Trust is expensive, so spend it carefully. Anthony just gasps the traitor's name, sounding completely destroyed. Then he absolutely loses his mind, screaming over 15 years of fake brotherhood down the drain. Marcus just gives him this icy shrug. He pulls out the exact custom pistol Anthony bought for him and points it right at his old boss's chest. Poetic cinema, right? 15 years, Marcus says, sounding dead inside. I stood in the rain at your funerals. I ate dirt while your grunts treated me like garbage. You built this massive empire and tossed me the scraps. This whole drama is just karma catching up to the Don. It teaches us a ridiculously brutal lesson. If you constantly take your best people for granted, you are literally handing them the matches to burn your life down. Always respect the folks holding your ladder because they decide if you stay up or fall hard. Marcus doesn't even blink. You promised me a top seat at the table, he snarls, but that table never got bigger. This isn't personal revenge, man. I just got a better paycheck. Victor absorbs the absolute devastation on Anthony's face and decides to twist the knife. Plot twist. For 2 solid years, Marcus has been leaking the mob's secrets. He gave up the security routes, the vault combos, everything. He was the ninja who dropped that creepy warning envelope at the mansions this morning. This betrayal is next level cold. We really need to pay attention here, guys. Fake promises are just ticking time bombs waiting to blow. If you string a hungry person along with fake hype and lies, eventually they will stop waiting, sharpen their own knives, and carve out their own piece of the pie. If you make a promise, you better back it up with action. The tension is insane as Victor drops the ultimate bomb. Remember that random innocent kid on the bicycle earlier? Yeah, that was Marcus's nephew all along. The truth literally deletes Anthony's soul. His legs turn to jelly, and his gun hits the concrete. In one awful second, the boss realizes his whole Mafia empire was just an open grave waiting for him to fall in. Panicking, Frank dives for a backup piece in his boot. Victor just raises one hand like a Jedi to stop him. Huge reveal. Those snipers hiding in the rafters? They don't even work for the boss anymore. They belong to Marcus now. Let's look at this together, you and I. Pure arrogance is the ultimate blindfold. When you get way too comfy on your high throne, you stop paying attention to the folks holding it up. Unchecked pride will always set you up for a massive, brutal downfall. Stay humble. The camera zooms in, warehouse shadows creeping. Victor drops the coldest ultimatum. 1 bullet, and this whole place turns to ashes in 4 seconds flat. He stares dead into Frank's soul, completely cooking his so-called loyalty. He is basically telling him to take the loss and live 5 more minutes, or get deleted right now. Frank is literally shaking, knuckles white, before he finally drops his piece. Clack. One by one, 11 top-tier goons fold, their guns hitting the floor like the saddest beat drop ever. Look, we are unpacking this together, guys. And the biggest takeaway, there is zero shame in dropping your weapon and logging out when taking the loss is the only logical way to keep your pulse going. For a whole minute, the only sound in that massive room is the embarrassing clatter of heavy steel hitting concrete. Victor casually strolls around this broken boss, feeding off his terror. Then, boom, he drops the ultimate nuke. He whispers that in exactly 1 hour and 40 minutes, the bomb tucked near his daughter's bed will turn her room into a crater. Absolute psychological warfare. Meanwhile, cut to miles away, 8-year-old Bianca is chilling under a desk lamp, staring hard at some piano sheet music. She spots something super weird hiding in the musical pauses. It is wild, but life really is like that. Even when the darkness is suffocating you, the smallest, quietest detail can be the exact glitch that saves your entire run. Back in that freezing warehouse, these hardened mobsters are basically statues waiting for the Reaper, but the real main event is going down inside that cozy study. Little Bianca is completely drowning in this heavy, dead silence. Mrs. Dot slides in through the heavy wooden door, dropping off a hot mug of ginger tea, but our girl does not even flinch. The old lady backs out, carrying some seriously dark baggage about the night Bianca lost everything. The camera pans down. Bianca presses her pencil into that thick music sheet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her tiny voice cuts the quiet as she rips this deadly puzzle wide open. It teaches us something we always forget. When the world is screaming in your ear, sometimes you just have to mute the lobby and trust your own brain. Stick with me here, because we are about to look over her shoulder and see the craziest plot twist. The little girl is counting the rhythm under the orange glow of her lamp, and boom, she hits 4.5. Her pencil stops dead. An extra half beat of pure silence. That is never a mistake when a genius writes the track. Most normal folks would just vibe to the pretty melody. But this kid knows that trusting the surface is how you get clipped. In 8 flat minutes, she guts the song, pulling out 7 busted bars hiding extra or missing beats. It is a tough pill to swallow, but reality works exactly like this. If you want to find the ugly truth of any situation, you have to stop listening to the sweet talk and start counting the cold, hard facts. The absolute sickest part of this trap is how clean it looks. We are talking about microscopic typos on a piece of paper, a 16th rest jammed into the wrong slot, or a tiny pause that drags on just a millisecond too long. A top-tier pianist would just sight read right over it without sweating. But in that quiet room, her dad's voice is playing on loop in her head. He always told her that the absolute wrong kind of silence is where the deadliest secrets sleep. Is that not the wildest thing about human nature? We let ourselves get totally hyped over the loud, flashy drama, completely sleeping on the quiet red flags. The biggest warnings you will ever get in life are almost always buried in the exact words that someone is trying their absolute hardest not to say out loud. The camera zooms right in on her shaking hands. Her pops used to drop this heavy quote, saying that only the guy who actually listens can hear the ghost screaming. Bianca can literally feel her heart hammering in her chest like a boss battle soundtrack. She grabs a thick piece of parchment, the exact same heavy paper her dad used to sign death warrants, and writes down the 7 fatal glitches. Suddenly, she cracks the empty air. The blank spaces morph into literal alphabet letters. Seeing as a fought to calculate like a cold-blooded hitman is honestly terrifying. But it proves a massive point about surviving the game. When you hit a brick wall, stop staring at the bricks. The answer you desperately need is usually chilling right there in the negative space. All those fancy music squiggles were literally never meant to be played. They were sneaky directional arrows pointing west, north, up, and down. In a matter of minutes, Genius Kid decodes a message that will give you goosebumps. It says, beneath floor, trapdoor, sewer tunnel, 80 paces, west, climb out. The battalion has zero clue. The air completely leaves her lungs. That first puzzle was a literal death trap, but this hidden layer is the cheat code. It is a secret tunnel for the crew stuck in warehouse 17 to dip before the place goes up in flames. This hits deep for anyone feeling cornered. The game is rigged with traps, but if you stop panicking and check the locks, there is always a backdoor out. Never log off until the timer hits 0. You and I need to pause for a second because what she realizes next is actually heartbreaking. There is a literal escape hatch right under the boots of the bad guys. It is a ghost route that the hitmen surrounding the warehouse are clueless about. Look at this, guys. Her dad never actually wanted to delete Mr. Moretti. He built this massive, scary trap, but secretly broke the mechanism so it would not be fatal. He rigged a flawless escape while pointing a gun at his biggest enemy. It really makes you think about how hatred works. Even when we are absolutely blinded by revenge, a tiny part of us still wants to leave the door cracked for mercy. He hid his forgiveness inside the silent parts of a song, because true silence is the only time we stop lying and get honest with ourselves. Just imagine the sheer panic crashing into this poor kid. The camera locks onto her pale face as this ice-cold realization hits her. If her dad really wanted to let those guys slide, why bury the map so ridiculously deep? The answer hits her like a freight train. He was not solo in that room. Someone insanely dangerous was standing over him, watching him write, just itching to pull the trigger. He was held hostage in his own mansion, which means those exact same walls are watching her right now. Pure fight or flight kicks in. She pushes away from the desk so hard her leather chair flips backward and slams into the floor. Life drops a brutal lesson here. When your comfy bubble of safety violently pops, sometimes the only valid strategy left is to just run for your life. She snatches that decoded parchment, folds it up with shaking hands, and shoves it deep into her wool sweater. Then, she absolutely bolts into the dark. Zero stealth, zero caution. She is tearing down the hallway, her shoes stomping the floorboards like a bomb timer, counting down to 0. She bursts into the main corridor, screaming for Mrs. Dot, demanding a ride to the Red Hook docks right this exact second. The old lady jumps up, trying to catch this frantic kid before she face plants down the stairs. She grabs her shoulders, begging her to just chill out and breathe. The tears are falling, but Bianca stares back with eyes colder than ice. Grief is heavy, but when a broken heart finally freezes over into pure vendetta mode, it makes a person completely unstoppable. The vibe right now is so tense you could cut it with a knife. Bianca finally puts all the pieces together. She accidentally sent Mr. Moretti walking straight into a concrete death trap. Her voice shakes as she tells Mrs. Dot that if they do not pull up to the warehouse in 1 hour, 12 dudes will be roasted alive, and a little girl goes down with them. The panic in the room goes off the charts. The old lady is trembling so bad she messes up dialing the phone twice. On the third try, her son Jerry answers, whining about it being late. But his mom shuts that noise down instantly. She commands him to get his cab to the alley right now. Zero excuses. We all figure this out eventually. When the nicest person you know finally uses their boss voice, you just shut up and follow orders. Stick with me to the end, guys. Mrs. Dot is absolutely not playing games right now. She goes full boss on her son, telling him the timer has hit 0. He does not get 10 minutes to get ready. He does not get 5. He needs to be idling in that alley yesterday, but because lives are on the line. Jerry understands the street rules. You never talk back when your sweet mother sounds like she is reading a eulogy. He snatches the keys to his yellow Toyota Camry and drifts out of his garage. 8 minutes later, that engine is screaming through the freezing rain, sliding into the dark alley. The door flies open, and little Bianca throws herself into the back seat. It is the realest lesson out there. When the clock is running out, overthinking will absolutely get you packed up. Picture this scene with me, guys, because the framing here is absolutely insane. The camera lingers on this little girl, completely broken by the weight of the night. Her wool sweater hangs by a thread, her sneakers totally soaked in freezing rain. Right here, her childhood is dead. Jerry pushes open the cab door, watching this shivering kid bolt through the storm. She demands a ride to a Mafia graveyard at midnight. True courage is not about your physical size. The most hardcore bravery lives inside the absolute smallest people. Dashboard glow paints Jerry in crazy, desperate shadows. He warns her those docks are crawling with absolute monsters. This is a brutal stage where kids just do not belong. He is literally begging to take her. Jerry white-knuckles the steering wheel, screaming at her to hold on tight. He pushes that rusted junker way past the red line, tearing out of the alleyway. Tires shriek against the slick asphalt, kicking up huge waves of black rainwater into the stormy night. Meanwhile, Mrs. Dot is pacing a hole into the floor of her massive mansion. Her hands are shaking like crazy as she dials Frank on a secure burner phone. Dead silence. She hammers 3 backup numbers, begging the universe for just one human voice. Listen, nothing but static. Listen, you and I both know the deal here. The fancy safety nets we rely on most, they always vanish the exact second things hit the fan. You better have a real backup plan for when your world goes pitch black, because nobody is coming. This is where the sheer genius of a completely broken man comes to light. Down at the freezing docks, the heavy storm eats every radio frequency alive. The crushing silence drops Mrs. Dot right into her chair, crossing herself and praying for a miracle. Now, check out Warehouse 17. The tension is so thick you could slice it. Victor Hale steps up to the legendary boss, Anthony Moretti. He does not scream. He just drops a massive bombshell. He looks Anthony dead in the eye and says his 8-year-old kid is starving to death just 6 blocks away from Anthony and his billions. It hits hard, right? The craziest blind spots in life are usually hiding in our own backyards. We look so far ahead that we entirely miss the raw truth standing right in front of our faces. The agony pouring out of Victor right now is insane. He stares down the biggest mob boss in the city, his voice cracking as he talks about his little girl eating from the trash. He describes her oversized shoes, shivering in a cold hallway because a scumbag landlord cut the heat. Here is the real gut punch. Victor watched her suffer for 5 whole years. He hid behind rusted fences like a coward, letting his kid fade away to protect his cover. He knew his massive revenge plot would go up in smoke if he stepped in. He traded his own daughter for pure vengeance. It is a brutal pill to swallow, but holding on to toxic hatred will always end up destroying the one pure thing you actually care about. You have to let the poison go before it takes everything you love. Victor twists that emotional knife deep. He asks Anthony if he knows what it feels like to watch your kid suffer while standing completely powerless. This is the exact moment the whole vibe flips. Anthony looks up, and all his raging mob boss anger evaporates. For the first time ever, Victor looks at his worst enemy and sees a mirror image of himself. Anthony just nods. He whispers that if his daughter Sophia dies tonight, that screaming agony is all he has left. We are looking at two underworld legends stripped bare by the exact same fear. It proves something huge. You can build up all the money and power on earth, but loving your family will always leave you totally exposed. Real love is a vulnerability no amount of expensive armor can ever protect you from. For one fragile second, the brutal Mafia war between these two titans just stops. They are both haunted by the exact same nightmare of losing their kids, but that ticking clock does not care about their trauma. The tablet in Victor's hand flashes red, showing just 1 hour and 2 minutes left. Meanwhile, Jerry pushes his busted taxi to the absolute limit across the bridge. He fights through blinding rain, while Bianca presses her pale face against the glass. They screech to a halt behind rusted shipping crates near the warehouse. Jerry cuts the engine and immediately spots heavily armed guards pacing the fence line. Here is a life lesson for everyone. If you are ever forced to walk straight into a deadly trap, you better step into the dark with your eyes wide open. You and I know Jerry understands these lethal streets better than anyone breathing. 30 years driving getaway teaches a man to spot the difference between a cheap thug and a cold-blooded killer. Panic grips his chest, begging Bianca to stay away from that building. But this wild kid is already unclicking her seatbelt. She looks him dead in the eye, ordering him to wait exactly 1 hour. If she vanishes, he must drive off and apologize to Mrs. Dot. Jerry pleads to call the cops. Bianca shuts him down with a truth that freezes his veins. By the time sirens wail, Sophia will already be a ghost. A bomb is counting down right now. It is a brutal lesson for all of us. Sometimes absolutely nobody is coming to save the day, and you have to step into the fire alone. Before Jerry can even blink, the car door slams and Bianca vanishes into the freezing downpour. She scrambles through thick mud, keeping perfectly hidden behind massive steel shipping containers. Her ruined sneakers splash heavily through the puddles. That soaked wool sweater hangs off her shoulders like an iron chain, but she refuses to stop. Every 40 feet, she presses her spine against the freezing metal, listening to the deadly night. High above, a sniper sweeps the slick pavement with a blinding beam of light. She holds her breath, waits for the glowing circle to pass, and bolts toward the rusted chain link fence. This right here is what raw bravery looks like. True courage is never the absence of fear. It is being totally terrified out of your mind and taking the step anyway. She studies the main loading dock through the rusted wire. 4 massive guards block the entrance, heavy rifles resting lazily across their chests. One cups his hands to hide the cherry of a cigarette. Sprinting at them means an instant, violent end. But here is the epic plot twist hidden in the shadows. Bianca never intended to use the front door. Letting the freezing rain wash over her face, she pictures the secret code hidden inside her father's old music sheet. That genius code revealed the exact map to a forgotten tunnel, 80 paces to the west. It is absolutely wild how one smart kid can completely outplay an army of Mafia hitters. Pure muscle is always loud and arrogant, but a quiet, sharp mind will consistently find the hidden path and easily win the long game. That hidden message proved those guards had zero idea this secret door existed. It was a forgotten underground drainage pipe, entirely missing from the syndicate blueprints. Bianca pulls away from the wet fence, moving steadily west. She silently counts every footstep while the storm screams around her. At exactly 51 meters, she finds the spot. A heavy iron manhole cover sits tucked away behind rotting wooden pallets. She takes a deep breath, preparing to dive straight into the muddy belly of the beast. We can draw a real lesson from this fierce little warrior. The path to saving the things you desperately love is never a clean, easy line. Sometimes you literally have to crawl down into the dirt and the darkness to secure your ultimate victory. Picture this epic final shot out in the pouring rain. Little Bianca is staring down a massive iron manhole cover blocking her path. Look closely, the edges are freshly chipped. Somebody was just here, meticulously prepping this lid so it would budge tonight. Plot twist, it was her own father. Bianca drops to her muddy knees, jamming her tiny fingers under the heavy iron. It weighs twice what she does. Her shoulders burn, and it barely moves. But she refuses to quit. She flips onto her side, plants her ruined sneakers against the wet concrete, and shoves with every single ounce of fighting spirit she has left. The heavy iron slowly groans open. It honestly goes to show you that sheer, unshakable willpower can break through the absolute heaviest obstacles life throws in your way. The iron lid groans back, releasing a vile wave of air that hits Bianca in the face. You and I are going to unpack this Mafia tragedy together, starting right here in the dark. It is the literal stench of the criminal underworld, dead water and rotting metal. Her stomach flips, but she swallows the nausea like a boss. Sliding over the jagged edge, she climbs down the rusting rungs into a total nightmare. Her shoes hit the concrete, instantly soaking in freezing sludge. It is pitch black, except for one ghostly halo of streetlight bleeding from above. Shivering, she grabs her cheap pink watch. It is a harsh reality check that true courage is not the absence of terror. Courage is making the quiet choice to carry your own fragile light into the suffocating darkness. The camera pushes in on her faded watch. She hits a button, and a soft blue glow pierces the pitch-black tunnel. Pay close attention, because her next move is insane. She turns and marches east. Her enforcer dad designed this secret escape route to flow west, leading his men to safety. To break in, Bianca has to completely reverse the map. She trudges 80 agonizing paces east through the freezing sludge. You can hear her counting every splashing step, her breath trembling in the hollow pipe. She drags her hand against the slime just to stay standing. It just goes to show that to fix a broken world, we often have to walk backward through the agzed pain we are trying to escape. Sometimes we must retrace the brutal steps that everyone else was simply too terrified to face. She ducks under rusted pipes, dripping freezing water down her spine. The cold is nothing compared to the plot twist messing with her head. How does a father build a flawless Mafia death trap, but purposely leave the back door unlocked? How can this ruthless mob monster hunting 12 armed men be the same gentle dad who taught her secret codes over milk? Which version of him is waiting up there? At 72 paces, her light catches a break in the concrete. A decaying ladder shoots straight up toward a heavy wooden trapdoor. This is her final hurdle. This terrifying ordeal proves that the people we idolize carry deeply contradicting shadows. Growing up means facing the agonizing truth that our greatest heroes are just as flawed and broken as the rest of humanity. Picture the framing here. A single blade of harsh white light bleeds through the edges of the wooden trapdoor. Down in the dark, Bianca shoves the decoded paper into her soaked sweater. She grips the iron rungs, pressing her fragile shoulder against the heavy wood, and slowly inches it open. The blinding truth floods her tear-streaked face, and then she hears it. a voice she has not heard in 5 agonizing years. The exact same gentle tone that used to read her bedtime stories is now coldly commanding a Mafia firing squad. It is a massive twist that totally shatters her reality. She shoves the door upward, pouring all her exhausted strength into the wood. It is a dark lesson that sometimes the terrifying monsters we spend our lives running from are actually the very same people who originally taught us how to walk. The trapdoor slams against the concrete floor with a violent clang, shattering the dead silence. Let us look at this epic sequence together, shall we? We are witnessing a tiny, soaked child walking right into the epicenter of a Mafia massacre. Her pale hair clings to her muddy face, and her small shoulders tremble from the cold. Yet, her blue eyes are deadlocked on the boss. She stares right at the tall man in the slick black coat and whispers, "Papa, stop." That fragile command hits the room with more destructive force than a live explosive, paralyzing these hardened mob enforcers right in their tracks. This unforgettable moment proves a profound truth. Even in our absolute darkest hours, genuine innocence possesses the raw, undeniable power to silence the most entrenched and violent hatred. Instantly, those high-powered rifles freeze right in their firing slits. These seasoned shooters were one heartbeat away from erasing everyone in the room. Now they just hesitate, waiting for a kill command that is never going to come. The treacherous Marcus Reed absolutely drops his jaw. Meanwhile, the defeated Mafia boss Anthony Moretti slowly lifts his heavy head, his shock melting into pure disbelief. And then there is Victor Hale, the cold mastermind, lingering by the stairs. He turns completely to stone. Victor spent 5 agonizing years obsessing over this exact moment of revenge, mapping out every single tactical variable. His sudden paralysis teaches us a deeply humbling lesson. No matter how perfectly we prepare for our bitter enemies, we can never truly calculate for the sudden, overwhelming intervention of grace. Stick with me here, because this is where it gets crazy. Victor mapped out every possible threat, but never anticipated his own daughter crashing the party. The baton slips from his trembling fingers, clattering against the concrete floor. He whispers her name, his commanding voice shattering on the syllables. He tells her she was never supposed to see this twisted side of him. Yet, little Bianca does not run away. She takes one brave step toward him, leaving tiny wet footprints across the dust. She cries out that he has been alive the entire time, but chose not to come back for her. Her raw pain echoes through the warehouse, illustrating a tragic reality we all must face eventually. The deepest psychological wounds we carry are almost always inflicted by the very people who swore to protect us. She cries out that she counted 1,825 Zvi, genuinely believing her dad had burned away. Hearing that unfiltered agony, Victor entirely crumbles. The brilliant syndicate mastermind collapses to his knees like a completely broken man. He buries his face in his trembling hands. The heavy emotional armor he forged over 5 bitter years simply shatters in a single sobbing breath. The tension in the warehouse is paralyzing. Bianca slowly walks up to her weeping father, but she stops a few feet away. She does not reach out to hold him. She merely stands her ground, watching him break down. Her physical distance offers a quiet but incredibly powerful truth about human relationships. Trust, once it has been profoundly broken by betrayal, takes far more than a sudden display of regret to ever rebuild. Bianca looks incredibly small next to this kneeling giant, reaching into her dripping sweater. She pulls out the damp paper. "You and I are about to figure out what really went down." She whispers that she read the secret layer, the 7 musical bars with the wrong rests, and found the hidden tunnel. Then she asks the ultimate question. If he wanted to destroy Boss Moretti so badly, why leave a literal way out? But if he wanted to forgive him, why build the lethal trap at all? Victor pulls his trembling hands away from his face. He looks completely wrecked, like a desperate swimmer who held his breath for 5 agonizing years and just broke the surface. His internal conflict proves an undeniable fact. Holding on to dark vengeance is really just another way of slowly drowning your own soul. He chokes out that he could not stop, his deep voice absolutely ruined by the heavy weight of guilt. The terrifying truth finally spills out onto the cold floor. 2 years ago, a shadowy figure tracked him down, offering unlimited funding and the exact daily schedule of Boss Moretti. The deal was supposed to be simple. Build the death trap and revenge would be served. But the stalker ruthlessly blamed him, threatening to eliminate little Bianca if Victor backed out. They even provided a terrifying photograph of his child sleeping in her bed. Victor became a desperate hostage to his own protective instincts. This crazy revelation hits hard, showing us the bitter reality of retaliation. Revenge is a toxic poison you swallow, hoping the enemy dies, but it almost always ends up destroying the innocent people you cherish most. Victor weeps openly, confessing he built the deadly machine, but secretly hid a door inside, praying someone would decode his puzzle in time. Bianca trembles, asking who forced his hand like that, but Victor never gets the chance to answer. "Shut your mouth," Marcus Reed screams, his voice snapping violently across the room. That smooth, arrogant mobster persona he carried all night is entirely gone. Marcus looks exactly like what he truly is, a desperate, cornered, and violently unstable hitman. He steps away from the crew, aiming his heavy pistol straight at Victor. Marcus loses his mind, screaming that the original plan was always for Boss Moretti to die right here. It is a stark reminder of human nature under pressure. Sudden panic quickly strips away our polished masks, violently exposing the terrified coward hiding beneath a tough exterior. Stick with me, because you and I are about to watch everything completely flip. Marcus stands there, smirking, spitting out the worst kind of truth. $2 million. That was the exact price tag on his loyalty. He is not dropping a massive bag of cash for some kid from the streets. Then the absolute unthinkable happens. He shifts his weapon and points it dead at little Bianca. The real mastermind was this snake all along. Marcus pulls the trigger and time just shatters. Victor launches his massive, battered body off the concrete floor, throwing himself straight into the bullet's path. It is crazy, but it teaches us a raw lesson. A parent's fierce, unconditional love will always crush the basic human instinct to simply stay alive. The stifling warehouse air completely shatters under the deafening roar of gunfire. Victor throws his entire weight forward like an absolute tank, pulling his terrified daughter tight against his chest. The heavy round blasts right through his shoulder, spraying the cold concrete, but this massive guy stubbornly refuses to hit the floor. For 3 agonizing seconds, everyone in the mob stops breathing, waiting to see if he is finished. Then, the paralyzed silence breaks. Frank, who was crouching near the dumped weapons, seizes his one tiny window to track back with desperate precision. It is an insane sequence, but it drops a heavy truth on us. A single, raw display of total sacrifice can instantly spark massive courage in the empty hearts of the people just standing around watching. Look at how this insane plot twist plays out. In the arrogant mob world, nobody ever bothers to search a surrendered man twice. Marcus totally misses the backup pistol Frank keeps wedged inside his boot and that sloppy mistake costs the traitor everything. With one smooth motion, Frank draws the steel and fires low. The first bullet brutally shatters the traitor's right knee, and a second round rips through his left thigh. Marcus hits the floor, screaming. But notice how Frank intentionally lowers his weapon instead of finishing the job. He knows a dead man cannot spill any secrets. It leaves us with a pretty harsh life lesson. Sometimes, sparing the miserable life of an absolute monster serves a much greater purpose than giving them a quick and easy exit out the back door. The sudden silence in that room is completely suffocating. 24 hired gunmen freeze in their tracks. These guys have zero moral code, caring only about the dirty cash Marcus promised them. They do not care at all about Victor or the tragic drama going down. Their only boss is money, and their paycheck is currently screaming in a puddle of his own blood. Out of nowhere, the rusted intercom crackles to life. Victor's voice blasts through the speakers, shaking from blood loss, but still sounding like an absolute boss. He orders the hitmen to walk away, and just like that, they vanish into the shadows like ghosts. It proves a bitter life lesson you should never ignore. Any fake loyalty you buy with cash will instantly turn into useless ash the very second your pockets run totally dry. The insane warehouse tension totally breaks when Anthony Moretti, the top Mafia kingpin, loudly cancels the hit. He swears on his late wife's grave that anyone firing another shot will deal with his wrath. The guards instantly evaporate into the shadows. Then we get a crazy plot twist that defies all logic. Anthony sprints across the concrete, ignoring the dropped guns, and rushes frantically toward his dying rival. When Victor's knees finally buckle from the agonizing pain of his wound, Anthony catches the massive guy with the desperate gentleness of a terrified father. It is a wild scene, but it highlights a powerful truth about life. Sometimes, the one person you consider your absolute worst enemy is the only one truly strong enough to hold you up when you finally hit rock bottom. The fire in Victor's eyes fades fast, replaced by the blank stare of a guy knocking on death's door. Anthony is practically begging him for the code to stop the ticking bomb countdown. With shaking hands, Victor reaches into his bloody coat and pulls out a tiny black remote. He shoves it into Anthony's palm, burning the last of his energy. "Just press the green button," he whispers. Then comes the massive plot twist. Little Sophia is perfectly safe in a Staten Island basement. Victor admits he could never leave an innocent kid with monsters. The bomb threat was just a desperate bluff. It leaves us with a truly incredible life lesson. Even when you are completely consumed by a blinding thirst for revenge, a decent human soul will fiercely refuse to cross that ultimate dark line. Victor locks in this bloody truce by swearing an oath on his kid's life. Without any hesitation, Anthony smashes his thumb onto the green button. The glaring red numbers instantly freeze at 47 minutes, beeping once before going dark. Pivoting like a madman, Anthony rips a radio from his vest and screams for his crew to rush to that Staten Island basement. Meanwhile, the massive Victor finally loses his painful battle with gravity. He collapses forward, and a thick pool of blood slowly creeps across the freezing concrete until it touches Anthony's boots. It is a brutal scene, but it hits you with a cold, hard fact about life. Every single path of dirty vengeance demands a heavy toll, and eventually the painful bill for your darkest actions will always be collected in full. Here is the emotional gut punch that will absolutely wreck you. Little Bianca completely breaks apart. She drops to the cold floor, wrapping her tiny hands around her dad's cooling fingers, pressing them against her tear-soaked cheek. She truly believes holding on tight enough will keep his soul anchored to the living world. She weeps, begging him to stay because she only just got him back. Anthony towers over them like a statue, silently absorbing the tragic sight of this broken kid. Right then, something inside the cold Mafia boss finally cracks, sparking him into action. It forces us to remember a deeply important life lesson. Family is the absolute only real foundation we have, and losing your entire universe is a waking nightmare no innocent kid should ever have to suffer through. Anthony straightens up, the heavy weight of his empire settling back onto his shoulders. His voice hardens into iron. He barks at Frank to get the van and wake up the underground mob doctor. Laying down the absolute law, he demands no hospitals, 0 cops, and no press. Anthony boldly declares this bleeding rival is now under his protection, instantly cooking up a fake story about a visiting cousin from Palermo. Frank scrambles to make it happen without a single question. Then, the most feared boss in the city kneels right back down into the bloody puddle beside the weeping girl. It shows us exactly what real character looks like. True leadership in life means willingly stepping into the ugliest chaos to save a soul, even if that person spent years actively trying to take you down. Anthony gently rests his rough hand over little Bianca's trembling fingers. For the first time in this crazy saga, the ruthless boss speaks with the soothing voice of a real father. Looking the terrified girl in the eye, he promises that her dad is not dying today. 3 brutal hours crawl by. The secret underground clinic is dead silent until the mob surgeon finally pulls down her mask and gives Anthony an exhausted nod. The bullet tore clean through the shoulder muscle, miraculously missing the vital artery by mere millimeters. Victor is actually going to pull through. This plot twist shows us something important about the world. A single, unexpected act of pure human compassion can completely rewrite a toxic tragedy, handing a deeply broken soul a beautiful second chance at life. You and I have to appreciate how this finally wraps up. Without a word, Anthony slides an envelope of cash into the doctor's pocket and walks down the hall. Inside the dim room, Victor lies completely still. A heavy bandage covers his shoulder and an IV drips life back into his veins. Right there, guarding him like a tiny boss, sits little Bianca. She has not moved an inch in 3 hours. A nurse scrubbed the dirt off her and wrapped her in a hilariously massive hospital robe. Still, her hand is locked in a desperate grip around her dad's fingers, terrified he might slip away. It leaves us with a totally sobering life lesson. The perfectly ordinary, boring evenings we always take for granted are the exact same miracles someone else is literally bleeding out just to hold on to. Stick with me here. This Mafia drama hits hardest when it is dead quiet. Down the hall, little Sophia is totally knocked out, hugging a plush bunny. In the dim recovery room, the heavy door creeps open. Anthony, the literal don of the city, walks in holding 2 steaming cups of black coffee. He drags a metal chair across the floor, moving like he is cornering a wounded beast. Victor forces his bruised eyes open, asking if the boss came to finally flatline him. But Anthony just holds out the warm paper cup and tells his rival to shut up and listen. It is a wildly powerful scene that proves a massive point. Real power is never about flexing loud threats. The ultimate boss move is sitting down and sharing a hot drink with the very guy who tried to destroy your world. The room is pitch black while Anthony drops the absolute biggest plot twist of the century. He talks about that tragic concert hall incident. He had 0 clue a rival crew was waiting in ambush. He only walked in because he found a spare ticket in his jacket. When the gunfire started, Anthony was busy shoving terrified civilians out of the way. He never even saw Victor's wife fall. He found out from the morning paper, and the massive guilt completely wrecked him. He actually cried for an innocent woman caught in the crossfire just because he wanted to hear some music. It drops a heavy life lesson on us. The smallest, random choices we make can cast massive shadows, forever altering the fragile lives of total strangers in ways we could never possibly predict. Watch Anthony's shaking hands as he pulls an old piece of paper from his jacket and tosses it onto the bed. Guys, it is a check for $200,000. He secretly mailed it to Victor's family right after the funeral with 0 strings attached. Victor looks like he just saw a literal ghost. His voice cracks as he admits they used that anonymous cash just to survive the crushing medical debt. Anthony stares back, his cold boss facade finally melting. He admits he never thought money could replace a stolen life. He just wanted to help carry the weight. It hits you with a massive truth bomb. The most legendary acts of pure generosity never ask for any clout or attention, and the absolute deepest apologies in life are always delivered in total silence. Let us step into this frame together, because the tension here is literally suffocating. Little Bianca grips her dad's hand like a cliff edge. After 5 solid years of acting like a heartless revenge machine, Victor finally snaps. Tears flood his tired face. Staring right at Anthony, he chokes out the most brutal confession ever. He's turned himself into a monster to hunt down the one guy who was actually trying to save his family. Blinded by pure vendetta, he dragged his own sweet daughter into an underworld nightmare. As the sun creeps over Brooklyn, the quiet is totally deafening. It serves up a seriously harsh reality check. Clinging to blind hatred will completely rot you from the inside out, slowly poisoning the exact loved ones you are so desperately trying to protect. The scene cuts to the docks. If you check the morning news, there is 0 mention of the absolute bloodbath at Warehouse 17. The Mafia buries its trash in the dark. Frank Delgado is out there moving like a phantom with his cleanup crew. Before the sun even comes up, they are scrubbing blood, grabbing bullet casings, and disarming bombs. And that masked backstabber, Marcus, he gets dragged off in heavy chains to a classified black site. Whatever insane fate awaits him is kept completely off the books, so Bianca never sees it. The rival gang actually spent 2 whole years plotting this betrayal right under their noses. It proves that toxic secrets, no matter how deeply you try to bury them, will always find a violently destructive way to explode right back into the light. The clock hits 6 in the morning, but outside Anthony's window, it is still pitch black. Frank slams a stack of files onto the desk, dropping a brutal reality check. That cash payout Marcus got was just the start of a hostile takeover. We are talking stolen turf, and a fully unhinged street war is about to pop off. But Anthony just shoves the papers away like garbage. Let the whole city burn. An hour later, Sophia blinks awake in her sterile hospital bed. She spots Anthony lurking in the shadows. Without a word, she launches herself across the room and locks him in a massive bear hug. You and I know exactly how this feels. When the outside world turns into an absolute nightmare, your only real safe harbor is the tight grip of someone you simply refuse to lose. The camera zooms in right as Anthony's tough armor completely shatters. This guy was forged in literal underworld fire. He did not shed a single tear when his dad was buried. When his wife died, his face was like solid stone. But holding this tiny kid, the unstoppable Mafia Don completely breaks down. Huge, agonizing sobs rip out of him right in front of the nurses. He is literally soaking Sophia's messy hair with his tears. When he finally gets a grip, he scoops her up and carries her down the quiet hallway, setting her down inside Victor's room. Right away, she spots another tiny kid sitting there. It hits you with a seriously deep lesson. Being strong is not about bottling up your trauma. Sometimes, the absolute bravest thing a broken guy can do is just surrender to the pain and let those tears fall. The scene shifts, casting a soft glow on a little girl the same height as Sophia. She is practically drowning in a faded hospital bathrobe 3 sizes too big for her. Her blonde hair is a tangled mess, like someone tried to braid it before giving up. Steps closer, with that dead serious tone only kids can manage after a tragedy. She looks her in the eye and asks if she is the one who saved her life. The heavy words hang in the quiet room. Bianca gets so embarrassed that a bright flush rushes into her cheeks, hiding the scattered freckles across her nose. This quiet moment uncovers a beautiful realization. During the absolute darkest chapters of our lives, our greatest salvation often comes directly from the most fragile and entirely unexpected hands. Picture the heavy silence hanging in that hospital room. Trembling slightly, Sophia reaches out, pressing a delicate chain into young Bianca's palm. It is her final tether to the past, surrendered to a fellow child. Then, the ultimate twist hits. The untouchable crime boss, Anthony Moretti, drops to one knee on the cold tiles. He looks this shockingly brave little girl right in the eyes. He tells her straight up that all the money in the underworld could never buy the raw courage she showed last night. True to his word, by Friday, her family is safely relocated to a secure brownstone. You and I have probably watched people chase wealth their whole lives. But the real truth is, the most profound rewards only find us when we step up and do the right thing, expecting absolutely nothing in return. Picture this insane setup. Anthony, the literal mob boss, is dropping the ultimate care package. He promises elite schools, a piano, and the fanciest doctors for grandma. But the real flex? Her dad never has to hide again. Little Bianca just stands there, squeezing a silver treble clef. Her response is straight up heart-melting. She whispers she does not care about the rich kid stuff. She just wants her papa. Hearing this raw honesty, Anthony actually breaks out a real smile. His first since losing his wife 3 years ago. He tells her she has her dad, and bonus, she just unlocked a powerful uncle. It really shows you that family is not just about who shares your DNA. It is about the legends who step up to shield you when the world completely turns its back. Let us look at Victor, laid out in a hospital bed, watching this absolute miracle go down. He is spaced out on painkillers, but reaches over to give his daughter's hand a soft squeeze. You and I know how heavy that baggage gets, right? In that tiny touch, 5 solid years of running for his life just vanishes. The steel wall inside his chest X breaks wide open, and the man finally takes a real breath. Meanwhile, out back, a heavy armored van rolls up. Mrs. Dot is helping frail old Grandma Rose, who has not touched grass in 12 months, out of the ride. They barely told her anything, just that her grandbaby survived the chaos. It goes to prove the wildest, most beautiful surprises always crash into your life, right when you are dead set on believing the good days are completely over. We follow our little MVP as she grabs her grandma's shaking hand and pulls her toward Victor's room. Guys, you have to grasp the gravity here. Rose spent 5 agonizing years convinced her son-in-law was 6 feet under. She literally buried an empty casket next to her own daughter. So, when she cracks that door open and spots Victor resting on the pillows, her brain completely short-circuits. Both canes clatter onto the cheap linoleum floor. She lets out a raw, gut-wrenching scream in Polish. She trips forward, grabbing his bruised face and pressing her forehead head right against his. It is the most human display of relief you will ever witness. It hits you with a heavy truth. Real, stubborn hope never actually dies, no matter how desperately you try to bury it in the pitch dark. The camera fades on 5 brutal winters of dodging hitmen. The broken squad is officially back together. Fast forward 6 months to a breezy spring day in Brooklyn. Outside a crazy expensive brownstone, a new brass plate catches the sun. It reads, "The Hale Family." Here is the massive plot twist. Anthony, supposedly a cold-blooded Mafia don, bought this entire fortress using a ghost trust fund. He did not ask Victor if he wanted a mansion with a private backyard. He just slid a plain envelope across the table with the keys inside, totally flipping the script on Victor's destiny. It is wild how one silent power move of kindness can completely reboot a ruined life. Real, heavy-hitting generosity does not sit around waiting for a permission slip before it steps up to fix a shattered world. Get a load of this aesthetic. Soft morning light floods a chill street. The big boss told him that a street promise needs a solid zip code. Watch the door as Bianca steps out into the sunshine. She is rocking the crisp blazer of her elite new academy, hair locked in perfect braids. Victor spent weeks fumbling like a rookie just to learn how to braid his kid's hair. The scared ghost from their fugitive days is gone, swapped out for bright, healthy energy. Victor is walking 10 feet tall next to her. His wrecked arm has healed into a jagged white scar, and he does not try to cover it up anymore. It proves a super basic rule we often forget. No matter how viciously your past wrecks you, raw love and serious patience will always grind down the sharpest edges of your trauma. The universe has flipped upside down. Victor spends his afternoons teaching piano to local kids for absolute peanuts. These munchkins stare at his scarred hands, hitting the keys like he is a total god. By the window, Grandma Rose is casually knitting. Her once terrified hands rock solid now. But the ultimate flex happens every Saturday at 4. A heavy engine rumbles, and a massive black Cadillac rolls up. Out steps the untouchable mob boss, Anthony, acting like a softie while holding hands with his kid Sophia. She hits him with a massive, missing tooth smile. It shows that no matter how much blood stains your backstory, you can still build something fresh from the ruins. Peace is not a lucky break. It is a hardcore grind you have to actively choose every single day. Sophia speedruns the porch steps before her dad shuts his car door. Ever since that standoff, these girls are joined at the hip. They use secret codes and crack up at stuff their hardened dads could never understand. The kids storm the living room, bringing pure, chaotic good energy. On the porch, Anthony drops into the chair next to Victor. A glass is already waiting for him, loaded with top-shelf whiskey. Stick with me here. 2 lethal predators who plotted to wipe each other off the map are now just chilling in silence. You and I can take a massive lesson from this scene. Our kids do not need to inherit the toxic beef we started. We possess the power to snap the vicious cycle, stepping back so the next generation can share a joke instead of a senseless street war. Victor lets out a heavy sigh, muttering that Anthony has been way cooler than expected. Anthony does not blink. He keeps that terrifying boss energy, growling that nobody should get it twisted. He still runs a syndicate built on broken bones. He admits he is no hero, just trying to be a slightly less garbage villain today. Victor gives a slow nod at the honesty. But guys, here is the massive lore drop the streets completely missed. 6 months back, Anthony dropped an absolute rule on his crew. He banned all Mafia operations from touching a concert hall again. 0 hits, no dirty money near the music. The takeaway is wild. Even the most ruthless monsters will build a wall around a peaceful, safe space, desperately protecting whatever tiny shred of humanity they have left. That ban locked down every theater in New York. Nobody in the mob was dumb enough to test it. Sweet piano notes float out the parlor window. Bianca is on the bench, showing Sophia how a treble clef looks exactly like the letter M. Sophia squints, then totally flips out with a brilliant smile. Anthony is frozen on the porch, watching them through the glass. For a few seconds, the crushing weight of a criminal empire deletes itself from his shoulders. Without glancing at Victor, he quietly drops the heaviest quote. He whispers that this little kid did not just save his daughter, she is straight up saving his dark soul. Here is the truth drop. Real redemption does not explode like an action movie. It sneaks up on you softly, usually carried by the pure innocence of a kid. Inside the parlor, Bianca gets that tingling feeling. You know the magic when someone who cares is watching. She peeks through the glass, locks eyes with her dad, and spots the mob boss in the shadows. Instead of freezing, she flashes a totally unguarded smile. Her hands drift back to the keys, without sheet music. She perfectly plays the opening measures her mom played at Carnegie Hall, the night she was taken out. It is a Debussy track, super soft and peaceful, but this time around, no hitman crashing the doors, no gunfire ruining the vibe, just the steady rhythm of serious emotional healing. Here is the brutal lesson. Holding a grudge is like locking yourself inside a dark cage. Digging deep to break out of that self-made prison is easily the toughest boss fight of your life. The villains who wreck our lives never come from the angles we watch, and our real backup is never who we expect. A literal kid will spot the truth way faster than grown guys flexing in expensive suits. When you drop random kindness into the dark, it bounces back in the craziest ways. Forgiveness is straight up terrifying, but it holds insane power. Even if it is 5 years delayed, even while staring at bad memories on concrete, it is never too late to patch up a glitched out soul. That is the ultimate takeaway of this messy run we call life. Look, if this wild ride of tragedy and payback actually hit you in the feels today, do me a massive solid. Smash that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this recap with someone who desperately needs a top-tier redemption arc tonight. Let me hit you with something real personal as we roll the credits. What went through your head watching Bianca completely climb out of that Mafia darkness? Have you ever caught an unexpected kindness, realizing how deep it was years later? Have you ever been pushed to the edge, forced to pick between the toxic hype of revenge and the heavy lifting of true forgiveness? Which path did you actually take? Drop a comment below with your city and give me one raw sentence about your story. I read every single one because you guys are the engine of this recap channel. To everyone grinding out there, I am wishing you max peace, solid health, and a real purpose. Guard the little ones in your squad. They secretly carry the absolute toughest, most resilient hearts in the entire lobby. The deepest lesson of the story comes through Bianca's compassion. She has every reason to silent. She is poor, hungry, frightened, and standing inside a dangerous house controlled by violent men. Anthony is not her family. Sophia is a stranger. The Moretti worlds cause pain connected to Bianca's own family. Yet, when Bianca realizes she can help, she chooses to act. She does not decode the music for money, status, or reward. Because another child is in danger. Later, when she discovers the second layer of the code, she again chooses courage. She understands that the men have walked into a trap, and even though they are dangerous adults, she still runs to save them. This is a powerful, educational message. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is the ability to see life where others see its enemies, debts, or revenge. Bianca Ayre's kindness does what Anthony S. power, guns, money, and experts cannot do. It creates a chance for survival. Mrs. Dodd's role also supports this lesson. Her small, daily kindness feeding Bianca leftovers becomes part of the reason Bianca is present when everyone needs her. A simple act of care helps place the street tiles the right place at the right time. This shows to kind of have consequences. They are far larger than we imagine. Education should teach children that compassion and courage are connected. Helping others may be frightening, but it can change the course of many lives. Bianca's choice challenges both Anthony and Victor. She becomes living proof that the next generation does not have to inherit the violence of the old one. The story's greatest lesson is hopeful. Power can build empires, revenge can build traps, but compassion can open doors hidden inside silence.